Underground, the Liberty Report.
Well, hello, America. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Moretti Underground, the Liberty Report. Today's Monday, May 4th, 2015. It's 8 p.m. on the East Coast, and we're reporting live from the studios of PRN Radio Network. That's the exclusive home of the Watchmen of America program. Hello, Watchmen. You all out there paying attention to this? Hey, it's rough, huh? I'm Joanne Moretti, and my great co-host, Scott Ferrarello, is here with me, too, and we appreciate you tuning in. Thank you very much. Our chat rooms, both at Blog Talk Radio and, of course, right here at PRN Radio Network, are open for you, too. A few of our awesome colleagues, Lynn, AstroTurf, and Famous Anna's on vacation, but she's usually here. Anyhow, they're in the chats putting the links, the articles, sources, and documents, and all that other stuff in there. So you have everything right there available to you. And thank you for that nice courtesy, ladies. These are my friends. They're my colleagues. They are more than people who put links in chat rooms. They're the best researchers and journalists and analysts I've ever met. So please say hi to each other when you get over there to the chats. You might run into several of our colleagues there because we do breaking news, and they're all in there with you, too. Today we have a lot of news to share. We got all kinds of stuff to share. We have investigations. We have all kinds of stuff. And we got some analysis, too. We'll also be, like I said, be doing live updates should the need arise. This show is kind of controversial, and the things we discuss are not always, the way that the mainstream media will present them, but we do strive to be correct. Probably rated about PG-13, too. It might be a little over the kids' heads. Before we begin, I first have to do a short disclaimer, though, and that's just to let everybody know that whatever's said on this show is my responsibility and not that of our fantastic hosts or sponsors. The disclaimer goes like this. The comments made by hosts and or guest hosts or phone callers of the PRN Radio Network do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints, ideology, beliefs, or anything else of members of the Watchmen of America program or the Patriot Resistance website, either in past, present, or future broadcasts. All right, well, now that that's out of the way, let me open up Scott's microphone here, and we'll get this party started. Hey, Scott. Are you there? No, I didn't open your microphone. That's why you're not there. How about now? You there now?
Hey, how you doing, Joanne?
Yeah, other than being a dimwit and not being able to open a microphone, I'm doing all right.
I was wondering. I kept knocking on the door, but no one was answering.
That happens around here. especially today. If anybody knocks on the door right now, they're not going to get a response. Anything you want to bring up? Boy, there's news breaking all over the place. The chips are hitting the fan.
No, except that Yeoman from Star Trek Original Series died. What a drag.
Oh, no.
Yeah,
from
they're
Star
dropping
Trek?
like flies. Original Series.
Yeah.
They're dropping like flies. So, Shatner, you better watch your back, pal.
If you had said Star Wars, I would have told you today is May 4th. May the 4th be with you. I know. It's corny. I know.
That's a good
one. Oh, goodness. Are you ready to flip your mind yet?
Yeah, go for it.
Oh,
in a great mood.
I've been flipping. I've been flipping out for a while now, a few days. I'm just
in a great mood.
Overwhelmed.
Let's see how long it'll take for you to ruin it. Okay?
All right. Well, let me tell you something. Pleasing everybody is impossible, but pissing everybody off, that's a piece of cake, all right?
It is. I like it.
Yeah? Well, block your ears, Lynn. Pissed off is better than pissed on in most cases. That New York police officer that was shot on Saturday has succumbed to his injuries, and he is subsequently passed away. He gets top billing today because he wasn't really doing anything. He was just getting out of a car when he got shot. He's only 25 years old, too. Young kid. He'd only been on the force for 4 years. His father was a cop, so, of course, he was a legacy pledge. But he was in an unmarked car in Queens, and he'd been in a coma since Saturday night when he underwent surgery for what court papers describe as serious injuries to his skull and brain. We found out that he was shot in the face, he was shot in the back of the head, and he was shot through the shoulder, closer to the chest, with an entrance and an exit wound. That bullet went right through him. Like I said, he was on the force for, barely 4 years, and he was killed in the line of duty. On behalf of myself and of this show, I would like to send my most sincere condolences to his family and his brothers in blue. Let's talk about this Texas attack, because this has got me completely out of my mind. Now, I don't know who likes or doesn't like Pam Geller. We're going to talk about this today, but please keep in mind this isn't about Pam Geller, the way I'd like to present the story to you folks. This is about free speech. Now, you have all these pundits and reporters and everything flipping out about the Drawing Muhammad cartoons, although I think it's tasteless, and I personally wouldn't do it because I'm not about mockery like that. If I got a problem with Muslims, we're going to talk about Muslims. I'm not going to draw cartoons just to aggravate them. I can aggravate them a lot better just talking to them. Now, although people think that that's wrong, and it could be, it's free speech. You can draw whatever you want. If you want to draw missiles and firecrackers and pigeons, go ahead. If you want to draw Jesus, go ahead. That's the beauty of freedom of speech, of our First Amendment. You can say whatever you want. You can draw whatever you want. You can be whoever you want. You can believe in whatever you want. Now, Pam Geller had this function at an event center. Gert Wilder was there. Louis Gohmert was there. Tom Trento, a bunch of them were there, including her. They knew that there was probably going to be problems, so they hired their own SWAT team, plus they paid for the extra security from the Garland Police Department and the school system. There's a lot of security there, and thank God there was. Because after the meeting started, a couple of guys came rolling up in a car, jumped out with long, I think they said AK-47s. I refuse to call them assault weapons because no weapon can assault you. That would be the person behind the weapon that would do that. Anyhow, they were long guns, I believe AK-47s. They jumped out, shot the school cop, and he ended up getting hit in the ankle, but he was able to get a couple of shots off, and he killed them both. I wouldn't act up in that school, by the way. If the school cop can shoot that good, take out two of them, I wouldn't act up in that school. Now, the guys are well known, well, at least one of them was, to the FBI. The other one is a convert. Now, we have talked about Islamic converts. This one was a young one, too. The kid's father said, we're Republicans, and, he was doing bad in school, and then all of a sudden he found Islam and changed his life around, and he was a nice kid. We thought everything was all right. The main guy, I'll give you their names in a second, Nadir Sufi, he's the main guy there. He owned a pizza place out there in Phoenix. They had an apartment out there. This guy, Simpson, the second guy, worked there, and he ended up converting to Islam. Now, back to Geller. The media is blaming her for everything like she was begging for it because she, her method was pretty intense, but it was a very good method to get attention for freedom of speech. Just like the guy who was burning the Korans there, that pastor, nobody liked him. They, what are they going to say? What are they going to say about him burning the Koran? He bought the book, it's his. The same with this flag stomping business. We don't like it, but we have to tolerate it. And that goes for Pam Geller, too, and this Draw Muhammad. Now, keep in mind also that the same people who are freaked out about somebody using a pencil and drawing Muhammad, they didn't even draw him with my horns and wings and stuff. They just drew him. You're not supposed to do images of Muhammad in any way, even if images. So, anyhow, back to what I was saying. They are flipping out about this. Aren't those the same people who are beheading Christians and pulling machete attacks in New York? And, what about that machete attack in New York? Did anybody draw a cartoon? Any of those cops that got hacked up, were they drawing cartoons? Or was there another reason that the Muslim hated them for being infidels? Same thing with the Fort Hood shooting. None of our beloved soldiers drew cartoons of Muhammad, but they all got shot up. How about that lady up in Oklahoma who was beheaded by the crazy guy who was disgruntled and got blown out of work? She didn't draw any cartoons, did she? So this is just all false narrative. It's like those kids we talk about. They need a safe room with their Play-Doh and their crayons. Then they're out in the street rioting, and then they go running back to the safe room if somebody has a differing opinion. Well, it's the same with these Muslims. The thing is that the Islamic religion, if you want to call it that, or the Islamic Sharia law, are trying to build a caliphate. They have to make the entire world believe in Islam. They have to make the whole world Muslim world in order for their prophet to return. So whether you draw a cartoon or whether you're a Yazidi up in the mountains or if you're a Christian Somali girl who's kidnapped, it doesn't matter what you do. It matters what they do. They have a holy war going on. And until people like us realize that, we are going to die. We are not going to get anywhere. And we're going to silence ourselves. They don't like you having guns. You're going to give up your guns. They don't like the religion. You're going to give it up.
The thing is that the people in the top of government and the media have all decided that there are protected classes of people, that there are double standards. You could say whatever you want about Jesus and Christians and white people and patriots and gun owners, but if you say anything about gays or Muslims or any of the other protected class, then you're going to pay the price for it one way or another. So
I'm waiting for that clash. I'm glad you brought that up, Scott, because I'm waiting for that clash. I'm waiting for the clash between the Muslims and the gays and the feminists. Because right now, everybody's flipping out at Geller, and the media, especially, the media, they should know what freedom of speech is like.
They're state-run media. So, they're not really, they don't have any freedom of speech, really. They get handed a script, just like Saturday Night Live does, and the White House says, I want you to talk about this and this and this and hit on all our talking points and push our agenda, and anything that goes against that, you've got to demonize. And they do it.
Right. Absolutely they do. And they do a real good job at it, too. But, like I said, what about Daniel Pearl? He was a journalist. He was beheaded. How about that other guy in the orange jumpsuit? He was beheaded, too. He was a journalist. And they were beheaded for freedom of speech. How about the ones that are imprisoned in Iran and Korea and all these places? These reporters and media people are all screaming, let them go. You have no right to hold them, freedom of speech. I think they think that they should be the only ones who are freely able to speak. And anybody who has a differing opinion, well, they must be silenced. Like the baker and the pizza parlor and the nuns. You wouldn't dare go after them. But
and it's only going to get worse.
Yeah, you wouldn't dare. Yeah, you would dare rather go after them. You go after them constantly, but you wouldn't dare go after a Muslim. How come nobody said a word, and nobody even walked into a Muslim bakery and asked to have somebody bake them a gay cake? Because it doesn't fit the narrative, just like my co-host just said.
Exactly.
Now, exactly. All right, Breitbart put out a story here. Victim blaming. CNN attacks Pam Geller. The bitch was begging for it. Because Jeff Zucker is hoping to salvage CNN by turning the news narrative into a left-wing reality show, it's not working, by the way, this requires that all big stories have a villain and a subsequent hate campaign against said villain. That's Zelensky he's describing. Naturally, the target of CNN's almost daily hate campaigns are almost always Christians or conservatives. Zucker isn't even willing to alter that formula when anti-jihad activist Pam Geller is targeted for murder in a thwarted terror attack. You know, they're not even calling it a terror attack, even though the guy posted his intention on Twitter and his reasons. They're not calling it a terror attack. They're stopping short of that. As you know, yesterday in Garland, Texas, there was the equivalent of the Book of Mormon mixed with Piss Christ in the form of a Muhammad cartoon contest. Just as Mormons and Christians would prefer not to be mocked, the same is, of course, true for Muslims. I can agree with that. The only difference is that when you mock or insult Mormons and Christians, you don't need a SWAT team to protect the event. For all kinds of obvious reasons, local authorities wisely decided that Geller's cartoon contest did need a SWAT team for security, something the event paid for out of its own pocket. And they were right. 2 gunmen with rifles were thankfully killed by police before they could Charlie Hebdo the event. One terrorist has been identified as a Muslim. They might even have been carrying bombs. The reason for the provocative event was just as righteous as the left-wing Charlie Hebdo reasoning for its cartoons mocking Islam. To push back against fascism, to mock those who threaten us, not to mock them. Well, that can't be allowed in a free society. To raise awareness of the horrors of militant Islam, Pam Geller has been fighting this righteous fight for more than a decade. For her brave, outspoken activism, Geller's treated with admiration by the mainstream media? No. Is she treated with even a modicum of respect by CNN, a network that advertises itself as objective? No. Not even after a murder attempt on her life. In fact, CNN's attacks on Geller all day Monday can be summed up in just a few words. The bitch was begging for it. The victim blamers at CNN are furious at Geller. First off, she's an outspoken conservative. They don't like her just for that. Second, this terror attack against her stepped all over CNN's desire to reignite the riots in Baltimore. Now, CNN has to change the topic to stories anathema to CNN's leftist anarchists, Muslims as terrorists, heroic cops in Texas, no less, and a conservative survivor victim. CNN's fury against Geller started the first thing this morning at the hands of New Day co-host anchor Allison Camerata. Forget all the good memories you have of Camerata at Fox News. She went the full CNN against Geller, attacking the activist as a bigot who was unnecessarily provocative. Camerata's victim blaming was disgraceful, and Geller ran circles around her. Would Camerata ask a rape victim if her clothes were too provocative? Of course not. But Camerata insisted that Geller's speech skirt was cut too high, that she provoked her attackers. Not to be outdone, hideous mean girl Carol Costello grabbed the anchor baton from Camerata and brought on guest after guest to repeat CNN's belief that Geller was begging for it. First, Costello brought on a black baby marker, Dean Obadiah, who attacked Geller for a full 5 minutes with no specifics, only ad hominem attacks. Then a guest from the far left Senior Poverty Law Center, the Southern Poverty Law Center, was brought on for another freewheeling 5 minutes of ad hominem attacks against Geller. Not once did Costello challenge her guest or demand specifics. Maybe she was too busy reliving the glory days of the assault on Bristol Palin. The baton was then passed to CNN anchor Ashley Banfield, who dug up yet another hater from her Southern Poverty Law Center to repeat the same ad hominem against Geller. Not once did Banfield challenge her guest or demand specifics. And finally, Hala Garani, yet another CNN anchor, victim blamed Geller with this ugly tweet. She says, "Why is Pamela Geller so obsessed with Islam? It's all she can think and talk about. Is it the result of some sort of trauma?" Well, like I said, CNN always needs a right of center villain, so if it's, one to get it to scream, the bitch was begging for it, and an outspoken woman who regularly risks her own life to raise awareness against the sexist, racist, homophobic, theocratic horrors of militant Islam. Now, none of these women who were attacking Pam Geller would fare very well under Sharia. First of all, they don't like women to talk, period. And if they do talk, you don't talk like these women talk. You don't dress like these women. You don't act like these women. But these women think they're off the hook, because they're out there fighting Pam Geller. Do they think that they would fare any better than Pam did?
Well, they're media whores, and they're preaching to the choir, which at CNN right now it's about 12 viewers, so it really doesn't matter. I mean, nobody that liked Pam Geller is not going to like her after these 5 libtards, went on a rant about it. They're just going to like her more. They're not going to change any opinion because everybody who they're preaching to already hates them. So I don't see what good it does.
Yeah, well, you're absolutely right. But none of them would stand up for themselves in the face of these attacks. Now, like I said, you don't have to agree with what Pam Geller did. It was a free speech. It was a free
I totally
speech
agree with it.
Rally.
I like drawing cartoons, especially people I don't like. It's my right. I used to, when I was in grade school, I didn't like my teachers. And I'd draw cartoons of myself blowing their face off with a shotgun, hanging them from the rafters of the school. Now, I did that because it was a good outlet for my, rambunctious behavior, over-the-top mind. Now, what do you think would happen nowadays if a little kid did that?
You'd be thrown out of school. You'd be in the shrink's office quicker you could say your name.
Office. You'd be expelled for 30 days, and the cops would be raiding your parents' house to see if there was any guns in there.
Yeah. Yeah, when I went to school, the boys drew all over their notebooks and stuff. It was, crazy stuff and skulls and motorcycles and weapons and all kinds of stuff. Guys do that.
And the thing is that the First Amendment isn't there to protect popular speech. That doesn't need protection. It's to protect unpopular speech.
That's right.
And once you start saying, well, we can't, make fun of any religious leaders now, they're going to, first off, it's not going to matter if anybody makes fun of Christians. Nobody's going to stick up for Christians. And, it's just going to be, well, get rid of free speech because you might offend someone. I could say the sky is blue on Facebook, and I could offend somebody just by saying that.
That's right. You breathe and offends them. So it doesn't matter what you say. They're on a mission. And I was up until after 3 o'clock this morning chasing down jihadis. Everybody who retweeted Sharia is light. That's who it ended up being, by the way. He wrote Texas attack with a hashtag, and he wrote it about 40 minutes before the attack happened and hasn't tweeted since. And it was determined that it was him. And we passed that around. And then everybody who retweeted it was sending a message. So we followed them, too. And we looked at who they follow and who followed them back and, what they were favoring. And it brought us to a lot of them. Also found a missing Muslim jihadi up in Toronto, too. We still haven't found him. It turned out it wasn't him. But that guy's still missing, so I'm sure he's up to no good because they're asking people to call Crime Stoppers, not the missing people. So something's up with that dude, too, that we found. Anyhow, this guy's Sufi. He's been named as one of the gunmen in the Garland Prophet Muhammad contest shooting. And, it happened just outside of Dallas. The two jihadis were shot dead by the Garland police. Anyhow, the duo tweeted using the hashtag Texas attack, and it was a few minutes before the attack. So, why would you tweet Texas attack when there hadn't been an attack yet? So that was a dead giveaway. Anyhow, the ominous tweets came from an account believed to be related to one of the attackers, and the account's been deleted now, and so is a whole bunch of them, too. But WFAA reported that the tweets were actually sent by Elton Simpson. Elton Simpson is the younger of the two. He was the first one. No, he was the second one named. But he is the one who was American, and he was converted. Listen to this story I want to tell you about. This is from Breitbart, too. Second shooter, Elton Simpson's father, speaks out. Elton Simpson's father, Dunstan, is speaking out. He denounced his son's actions to ABC News. We are Americans, and we believe in America. What my son did reflects very badly on my family. Dunstan Simpson described himself as a strict father and said his son was always a good kid, but said Elton made bad choices. Father and son had not spoken much recently because we had some very serious differences. According to his father, Elton Simpson was on vacation from his job in a dentist's office at the time of the shooting and had been away from the office for a few weeks. All right, so he had been away from the office for a few weeks. He was planning jihad. Anyhow, the same ABC News piece quoted his father and the lawyer. The lawyer said from his 2010 terrorism trial, and her name's Christina Sitton, she said he grew up the most normal guy, just a normal high school guy. Converting to Islam seemed like a good thing for him. He had been going down a bad path, and then he found Islam. He never struck me as someone who would do this sort of thing. I'm not a bleeding heart. I'm a Republican. I've seen some pretty bad guys, and he seems pretty normal. Okay, there you have it right there. How many times have we talked about this? We did a bunch of reports, even on this show, about how these kids, they're at risk, they're put in these programs, and the imams end up converting them, and they go after the ones who are easy to manipulate. You know, some that are not too bright, some of them have mental illness and things like that, bad behavior. They go after those ones. Now, the imam at his mosque is saying, well, he left the mosque, you know, a couple of weeks ago. He hadn't, you know, he was coming regularly, but then he left a couple of weeks ago. Doesn't that sound exactly like those kids that we chronicled?
Yeah.
Remember the one out in Kansas City? The imam said, well, I stopped giving him rides to work and to the mosque. Why were you giving him rides to work and to the mosque to start with? You knew the kid had mental illness. Anyhow, this kid here sounds exactly the same as them. He was doing bad, found Islam. All of a sudden, everybody's happy with him because he's found structure. He's got mental illness. Him and his father are having difficulties. It's the same story. Now, they're going to tell you that this is a one-off, that these two guys plotted this all by themselves and they put it on the Twitter. Well, the Twitter tells a different story. They did not plot it themselves. They were very much in communication with not only the imam and the mosque and each other, but all those people on Twitter, all those jihadis. There was one woman, her handle was a bunch of numbers. Now she calls herself Protocol of Islam. She was posting cry faces, you know, those little icons, the cry faces. Oh, my God, he said he was going to do dua, and I thought that meant he was going to get married. Dua, D-U-A, means that there's going to be some major changes in the person who's doing the dua's life. And it concerns religion, whether it's a religious ceremony or, you know, they're being converted or they're getting married or something. Well, in this case, he was going to meet his virgins. And they were retweeting all of this. Everybody who retweeted it before the event and shortly after the event, we followed. And they're everywhere, man. They are not lone wolves. There's no such thing as a pack of lone wolves. And I assure you, these are a pack. And they're plotting more. They were all excited, and they were saying, yeah, we're going to do more, and Texas hosted it, so we're going to go after Texas, and, you know, death to the great Satan, and they're all praising him, and, you know, people crying over him and telling each other not to cry because now he's at a better life. All right, now, Simpson, all right, after he had converted, the FBI knew that he was a threat, and he had attempted to go to Pakistan to join ISIS. Now, the FBI built a case against him, but the judge let it go. The judge's name is Mary H. Murguia, M-U-R-G-U-I-A. She's Hispanic, is pronounced Murguia. Anyhow, the defense's argument said that jihad didn't mean that he was going to be dangerous. That just meant that he was performing his religious duty. You know, like when you go to the pilgrimage. So the judge bought it. Well, we looked up the judge. This judge was appointed by Clinton, and that was to the lower court. Then she was appointed to the 12th Circuit Court of Appeals up in D.C. by Obama. And she's a full-blown liberal. She assumed office in January 4th, 2011. She was a judge, of course, at the United States District Court, and then she moved up to the district judge to the District of Kansas. Now, her brother is also a district judge. His name is Carlos Morita, but she's got a sister. Her sister's name is Janet Murguia. Know who Janet is? Janet is the head of La Raza. She is bringing all these Somalis, to which these guys happen to be, and, of course, the Hispanics, but La Raza is the race, and that's about Hispanics, but she's working on this immigration and amnesty and all of that, so these guys get in on it. The judge's sister is the head of La Raza. So I don't know that this judge should have even been determining this case. The FBI had a file on him. They knew he was a threat, but that threat was ignored. And he's not the only one. There are bunches of them. And I don't know what we're going to do here, but they are saying that it's on. They are happy. They're celebrating. They want to do more. They're trying to recruit each other. They're saying, any brothers here, go do this or go to this place or, pay attention to that. And they're giving each other directions. We're trying to keep an eye on them, but we can't keep an eye on all of them. So what you have to watch for is if somebody tweets something, it just doesn't sound right, something about it doesn't sound right, and then everybody else starts retweeting it, that's a signal, just like the signal that Sharia is light gave.
And what can you really do about it? Because, if you know about it, all the intelligence agencies know about it because they're spying on everybody 24/7, and they're letting it happen. So you really can't do anything about it. I mean, when your own government is not only allowing it, but just actually helping it, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
Besides,
what are you
like
do?
you said, look for tweets, look for weird posts, and avoid the area.
Yeah, and they're pretty vague, but when they all retweet the same thing, you wouldn't believe how far that Sharia is light tweet went. I mean, that was picked up and spread like wildfire. I couldn't even keep up chasing the retweet on that. That's how quickly and how many it was spread. It spread everywhere from Algeria to Indonesia to Pakistan to all over the United
Twitter
States.
Shut that
London.
down in 5 minutes if they wanted to.
They did shut
them
them down. And they did shut them down. You'd catch up with one and you go back and it was shut down, but they had 8 more pop up. And then they'd say, follow this, this, and this, and then you go to it and it's all the same tweets and the same people. So that they have like 5, 6, 7, 8 profiles each. And there's a lot of them, man. There's a lot of them. Color Me Red was all over it last night. You should see the stuff she sent me. Denise, Sponge Docs, we were up until, all of us were up until 3 o'clock. And they stayed up after I did. All right, so here's the mosque president of the Phoenix Mosque. Now, this Phoenix Mosque, they got a couple of bad actors over there. But the mosque president said that a man who a federal official has identified as one of the gunmen who opened fire outside the Prophet Muhammad cartoon contest has worshipped there for about a decade. But Islamic Community Center of Phoenix president Usama Shami says the man quit showing up over the last 2 or 3 months. Federal law enforcement officials identified one of the suspects in the shooting as Elton Simpson. Shami said Simpson got along with everybody at the mosque, but Shami said Simpson was rattled by an FBI investigation driven by an undercover informant who had infiltrated the mosque. According to documents, Simpson was convicted in Phoenix of lying to the FBI in 2010 about whether he'd discussed traveling to Somalia. So they all knew him. They all knew that he was going to Somalia, and it was Pakistan, actually, not Somalia he wanted to go to. His family came from Somalia. Oh, God. And then we looked at where he lives. That's a mixed residential area. The property developer, B&H Property Development, okay, they own a lot of places, like in their offices in Brooklyn, but everywhere from Phoenix to Pennsylvania to Utah, they have all these developments. And what they're doing is they have a contract with Health and Human Services and refugee resettlement through the Lutheran Services and the Catholic Charitables. And they are placing all these people in these apartment complexes, all these refugees. They rent to other people, too. And a lot of the other people who rent there are already Americans. I don't know if they're getting subsidized rent or anything, but it's like these little enclaves. And there's streets and streets inside these developments. They're all the same apartment complex type thing.
Yeah.
And they're loaded with refugees. In this case, Somalis. But there's, some with Syrians, some with Iraqi.
Yeah, I know. I had to move out of my apartment complex because they took over. Woke up one day, there were hundreds of them in the parking lot.
Yeah, and that's what they do. Now, Texas, Governor Abbott, he has put the Texas Rangers on the border. So Obama goes around them, he flies them in. He's airlifting them in.
They're being flown in by the thousands.
Yeah.
Idaho just braced for another influx of Syrian refugees.
Yeah, I know. And that's what they're doing, is they're building cities within the city. And pretty soon they're going to be no-go zones. They're even changing the street names and writing them in Arabic.
Oh, jeez. Nice.
Oh, yeah. Up in Minneapolis and other places, yeah, they're changing the street names. So, back to this Geller thing. You got to watch it about this free speech, because you can't let people silence you. You don't have to agree with drawing Muhammad cartoons. Like I said, I wouldn't do it, but I'm still not going to even say anything about not doing it to others. Do your own thing, folks. It's your liberty. It's your right. If you want to say things or you want to draw things, you do it. Do not let anybody stop you. Do not let them silence you. That is the goal. You're censoring yourselves. And other ways, too. You can't say thug. You can't call people Mr. or Mrs. anymore. And all the other words have changed. Hillary had a whole list of stuff you couldn't say.
Well, they can try to ban words all they want. It's just going to make me say them more. So, they can kiss my, what.
And that's the point I'm trying to make, is please don't ever stop that. If you want to say something, say it. Even if nobody likes it. You got to say it anyhow.
I do it for that reason, just because they don't like it.
Yeah, and you can't let yourself be afraid. And even when the news was showing the contest, the pictures, and the event, they were showing everybody scattering. They blocked out the pictures that were on the easels.
You know what my favorite picture was in that?
No.
It was the two chalk outlines on the ground afterwards.
Oh, yeah, I saw that,
now that's
too.
a joke, all right?
Yeah,
it might offend some people, all right?
That might offend some people.
I don't care. It's freedom of speech. And I'll make insensitive jokes if I want to. Don Rickles, they'd probably thrown Don Rickles in prison if he would have came out, now instead of in the, 50s. Can you imagine a Don Rickles of today?
Oh.
I can't. Getting up there and telling all these racial jokes. Oh, my God. They'd have him in shackles,
I went to see Rodney Dangerfield one time. And the first thing he said is, "Hey, any blacks in the audience?" And a bunch of people applauded. He said, "What's the matter, no basketball game?" And everybody laughed. You can't say that.
Yeah,
now.
and that's not even a bad one.
No, that's not a bad one. I wouldn't have said it if it was bad. But, everybody's lost their sense of humor. Everybody's lost their sense of civility.
Well,
Everybody's lost...
And they're all doing it. So someday when the United Nations are making all the decisions, what they pretty much are now anyway, they can just ban words, ban whatever they want, and if you violate it, you're going to go to jail. I mean, you have people on the radio in Canada, and they say something about Islam, and the cops come kick in their door and take them to jail.
See? And that's why you need to protect that First Amendment. And our founding fathers didn't put that First Amendment in there because everybody was talking about roses and daffodils. They were talking about revolution. And they were talking about the ills of their oppressors. And they weren't supposed to be talking about revolution or that the crown was doing anything wrong. So that's why they did it. You have to be able to defend your rights, or you're going to lose your rights. And if you capitulate and you let them tell you you can't say thug, then you have surrendered.
Yep.
You didn't win anything. You know,
No,
there's a difference between civility and liberty.
They
nice
have to
be
destroy American sovereignty and everything that made our country great. They have to get rid of that because we're pretty much the only one left on the planet that has any type of freedoms at all.
Yep.
You know, they don't do that in the UK or anything either. I mean, everything is politically correct. You know, I mean,
and look where it's gotten them.
Yeah, nowhere.
No. They have silenced themselves, they've censored themselves, they've disarmed themselves, and now they're all sitting ducks, and the women are getting raped, and the children are getting beat up, and there's roving gangs, and there was Charlie Hebdo in Paris, you know? Everybody else gave up the guns except the bad guys. They didn't give up theirs.
It's exactly what the powers that be want. They want no one to be able to protect themselves. So you've always got to call on the state. The state is God. The state will protect you. The state will decide everything, from what you eat, from how much water in your toilet, everything.
How long you can take a shower.
Oh,
yep.
Yeah.
Hope you don't have suds in your eyes when the water goes off. All right. Anything more you want to talk about with that? Because I mean, we're gonna stay with this. Red just posted another one into the chat room. That's Fire 14, and he's another one who was throwing threats out there. So we're gonna keep an eye on these people, and we're gonna track them, and just keep an eye on our Facebook pages, because I'll try to keep at least a running list of the ones that we do find. All right, let's move on. Let's talk about Baltimore. Today, Baltimore, there was an incident. I was watching Fox, and the reporter was on, and he said, oh my God. He said he was sitting in his car. He was getting ready to do a live shot from the Ground Zero there on Northern Ave in Baltimore. He said he heard a gunshot. He saw a police officer shoot a guy. Well, sometimes your eyes are deceiving. The police officer was standing in the street. He did have his gun drawn. There was a gunshot heard, and there was a guy on the ground. That looks like the cop shot him, didn't it? But that's not what happened. He was chasing the kid. The kid's pants were down around his knees. The kid fell. When he fell, the gun came out of his hand. The gun that the kid was holding is the gun that went off. Nobody got shot. But when the crowd started to form, they got maced with the pepper spray. And the kid that they had on the ground handcuffed, he got maced too. So that's why they took him to the hospital. And they charged him with a felon in possession of a firearm. Now, nobody got shot, but a girl was on TV saying, I saw them shoot that boy in the back and he just fell, and we're going to riot tonight, and we're not putting up with this anymore, and the cops this and the cops that. Well, that is not what happened. And they came out real quick, but by then the crowds were forming. The cops were in trouble, so they had to put up a police line. Everybody was freaking out, thought that they killed him. And then the Leland, whatever his name is, he was talking to the girl that said that she had seen the whole thing. And he said, yeah, they killed the guy. The guy wasn't killed. He wasn't even hurt. But they let his family see him at the hospital. And, of course, he was twitching and crying, and he was limping. So, you know, now he's putting on a show like he was hit with Agent Orange or mustard gas or something. It was pepper spray. It's made with cayenne pepper. It's not going to make him twitch. And they washed his face off and cleaned him up and everything at the hospital. They took him to the hospital because they didn't want to have anything, you know, go wrong with him in a police transport. They put him in an ambulance.
I posted a video of that, by the way. And, you know, the cops were shooting people in the face just for fun, though, as well. So, Both of them are guilty of doing stuff. No one's an angel here. There's
No,
no
well,
Batman and
Baltimore.
Robin.
Baltimore is the worst cesspool example of a cesspool I've ever seen. In our investigations, the nepotism is absolutely insane. The state's attorney, who is the one that brought the charges against the cop, she's married to the city councilor, who was there the nights of the riots and telling the cops, stay away from them, let them do what they're going to do. And he was like standing in front of the cops, telling with his hands up, saying, don't go near them. So they're not going to go against the city councilor. He's the one that let them do the rioting. And, of course, the mayor who set up the zone.
Why not go against the city councilor? Why not? Huh? That guy was guilty of obstruction of justice, aiding and abetting arsonists, looters, accessory to all those crimes. They should have arrested him on the spot, did their job, worried about arresting the mayor later. Because right there is when you had a chance, you made a choice. You're going to stand with what's right and the people that pay your salaries to protect them, or are you going to stand with the criminal government? And they made a choice.
Yeah. And, which one of them individually was going to be the first to step forward? Now, I'm not saying anybody's right. Like my father would say.
I wouldn't have cared.
Like my father would say, there's no virgins in that whorehouse up there. None of them. The cops, the city council, the mayor, none of them. The police chief, the state's attorney, none of them. Now, the deputy state's attorney, remember they got that kid's name, Dante Allen, said that he was the second person in the transport vehicle when he was never in the vehicle. That story came from a reporter named Mills, is her name. She is the girlfriend of Bledsoe, who's the deputy state's attorney. They have a same-sex relationship. So now you got the reporter is sleeping with the deputy state's attorney. The state's attorney is married to the city councilor. The mayor is also the secretary of the DNC. Her husband was a cable guy and now is a big real estate developer. That's a leap. The money that came in and out of there, billions of dollars just in stimulus money. Nobody can account for it. The unions, you can't fire anybody. It's a pathetic crap hole. And then you got Cummings, who's right there in the thick of things, and he's been there 30 years, so I would figure he's the grand foobar over there running the show. Then, of course, you have Malik Shabazz, who's now a distinguished attorney, and he started Black Lawyers for Justice. Malik Shabazz is the founder of the new Black Panther Party. He's also a member of Nation of Islam. Then you got Nation of Islam, who has now brought the Crips and Bloods together, and everybody's saying how wonderful it is that the Crips and the Bloods have called a truce, and Nation of Islam is who facilitated that truce. And they're all bragging that no black store owners got hurt, which they did, by the way, but they're lying. They said when people were going to loot the black stores, we just pointed them in the direction of the Asian and the Arab stores. So that's what you call progress?
Yeah, and you know whose businesses mostly got destroyed in Baltimore?
The Asians. The Koreans. And that
Asians
Arab pizza guy.
And just regular folks, yeah.
Yeah, the pizza
but
guy.
Mostly Asians.
On the pizza guy, he's Arab. I think he was Lebanese. They poured lighter fluid on him and were throwing lit lighters at him as he was running. They destroyed his place. And the Crips and the Bloods and the Nation of Islam pointed him out. Now, the CVS store was burnt down. The CVS store didn't even want to be there. They were begged to come there. They were given all kinds of incentives. The same with that Town Mall. All kinds of perks and everything to stay there. And to go first to come there, then stay there. They didn't want to be there. And now they are not committing to reopening. So then you got the mayor who come out today. Listen to this story. This is from Michael Cantrell. If you thought Baltimore Mayor Stephanie Rawlings Blake was completely out of her mind before, she's opened her mouth and removed all doubt. Rawlings Blake said something so ridiculously stupid about looted vendors, it's enough to make you want to facepalm and head desk at the same time. It's that bad. All right, this is from CNS News. Baltimore Mayor Stephanie Rawlings Blake took a tour of the looted Monument Mall on Sunday, calling it a great day and thanking all of the vendors who are here, including a company called General Growth. You know, they want to stay here. They want to continue their investment, and I think it was smart. It's certainly the smartest investment because this is a growing community. I've been coming here since I was a child, taking my Christmas pictures with Santa. I think the Easter Bunny, the mayor explained. You can come up General Growth. If you want to come up, come on. She encouraged the representative of the mall's management company. You sure, she asked, when the representative, whose name she did not use, declined her offer to stand with her. I know the woman's name, it's Sonia. Anyhow, and this is just a great day for this community to have the mall reopened. Just a wonderful day. Are you kidding me? The mall reopened. The kiosks that were in the center, the ones with the watches and all that, they were destroyed. Some of the stores didn't open. There was only a handful. They're closing at 6 p.m. They're not going to be open till 9. The sun goes down, they're out of there. And the stores that were mostly looted and smashed and all of that, they're not coming back. They have said, it's not a good investment. Why would I come back? I'm going to fill my store with inventory again? And just so, because these riots worked and because there was no consequence, these people think that, okay, I'm going to open my doors and people are just going to come in and smack me around and take whatever they want. Why would I do that? Why would I bother coming back? And they're right, yeah. Scott, they're right.
Especially since what are you going to do? Call the police? You're going to call the police and they're going to say, oh, we're sorry, we'd like to help you out, but our mayor told us to stand down. So you're on your own.
Yeah, it's just property.
Yeah, it's just property.
How about,
you're on your
own.
How
about the little old lady? How about the little old lady in her little mom-and-pop pharmacy there? She had to lock herself in and then wait for somebody to come and rescue her and take her out the back. They tore her place apart. She's not coming back.
No, I wouldn't either. This is going to continue to happen in big cities for a while until, the idiot at the top decides it's enough. He's already setting the narrative, saying there's too many cops in this country that treat blacks and Hispanics terrible. And that's going to be the reason for the federalization of police, is that the only way to make sure that blacks and Mexicans and illegal aliens from all over aren't treated differently is if the federal government takes care of it.
Right. That's exactly the goal, too. As a matter of fact, Obama was at a forum today, My Brother's Keeper. They say it's privately funded, but yeah, okay. We'll believe that, like we'll believe Acorn was privately funded. As a matter of fact, they're offshoots of Acorn. Well, he had a whole bunch of them at a meeting today. And the stuff that he was saying was, why does he get away with this? He said that, justice is distributed unevenly. He says, Mark Nolla says, Obama said a sense of unfairness and powerlessness helped fuel some of the protests in Baltimore. No, the cops standing down helped that. Obama cites boys and young men of color are treated differently by the law enforcement when it comes to stops and arrests. Obama says too many potential role models for boys of color are languishing in prison over minor nonviolent drug offenses. I'm finding that hard to believe up there in Baltimore because they're in and out of jail. Look at the one in New York. He was in jail for 4 years and 8 months for attempted murder. All right, this kid, Freddie, he was a snitch. He had been arrested 5 times since January. So he wasn't languishing in any jail, some role model. Though he grew up without a father, lost and adrift, Obama says he got second and third chances that helped him succeed. I was lucky. So, of course, he made it about himself now. And then he says he's going to keep fighting to help kids make of their lives what they want. And he says in too many places in this country, black and Latino boys and men experience being treated differently by law enforcement. And citing statistics for police stops, arrest charges, and incarcerations, Obama says that the law is not always applied evenly in this country. Okay, folks. Now that we've pulled out those points, I had something to say about this. I'm going to read to you what I wrote. It was kind of a rant, but I titled it, Stand Up, Stand Together. This is the big one. Baltimore's just a piece of the big picture. I wrote, the enemy's not each other. That's too orchestrated. Look at this mess. Blacks hating whites. Blacks hating cops. Is he trying to get more blacks killed? I'm telling you, really, is he trying to get more blacks killed? They're outnumbered. They're outgunned. You know, there's not that many of them, and they're killing each other off, and they're aborting all their babies, so there really aren't a whole lot of black people anymore. And at this rate of abortion, there aren't going to be a whole bunch. And they're outgunned by the cops, you know, so why is everybody hating each other?
He doesn't care because, you know, he uses people, he uses religion or whatever at his disposal to push the agenda. You know, it's Saul Alinsky, ends justify the means. Doesn't matter how you get to the you know, the means and the ends. Doesn't matter what your means are as long as you get to that end goal. And he will sacrifice anybody.
Yeah, well, they don't even realize they're being used. Anyhow, you know, whites have no idea what they did wrong. Most whites that I know, they've spent their whole lives trying to make up for all the wrongs, and they try to engage with minorities. They don't even know why they're being rejected. Put it this way, folks. Nobody alive was a slave, and nobody alive ever owned a slave. So it's time to be rational for once, while we still can, of course. You know, eventually they're going to give up. Look at the hate for the cops. Cops are low man. Yes, they enforce the law. But who keeps making these oppressive laws? The politicians make the laws. They impose extravagant fines and regulations that are so numerous now you have to assume everything's illegal. Then they send the cops out to enforce those laws. Now the cops don't trust the people, and the people don't trust the cops. It was a very effective tactic. After that, you have your low common sense people who vote the same way for change. What freaking change are you expecting from a politician who hasn't delivered in 30 years? Cummings has been there 30 years. You know, you might want to consider this is change. It's change that took them 30 years to get here. The politicians you see out there marching with the rioters, those are the real culprits. Those are the real reasons that they're rioting. But it's easier to blame the cops. Those low-rent wannabes from the universities, you know the ones I'm talking about, the self-loathing trust fund babies. Well, they fancy themselves as some sort of revolutionaries because their totalitarian Marxist professors told them they were. In the meantime, they're just useful idiots. What revolution was ever held to put you under the control of an oppressive communist totalitarian system? Grow the heck up, kids. You're not revolutionaries, you're idiots. And so is whoever's paying for your education. The radical left politicians and groups bust these stupid little commies from place to place and then bitch that the out-of-towners are stirring up the trouble. Well, yeah. Isn't that why those groups trained them? Isn't it why Lisa Fethian was on the ground in Ferguson and in New York? Isn't that why she makes the big bucks? Isn't that why Shabazz, Nation of Islam, ANSA, Rev.com, Sharpton, NAACP, the Union Goons, and all the ACON groups are on the ground at these riots? Isn't that why Soros spent $33 million in Ferguson to get the party started? Hell, even Amnesty International and the UN had a presence there. Of course, they demand the Feds step in and take control of the police. That was the goal to start with. Think about it. The administration has decimated the military. They federalized the state's National Guards by keeping us in a state of perpetual war. They federalized the police. Who protects you from the oppressive government? Gray, Brown, Garner, Trayvon, they were all vessels. If not for the agenda, they would not have made page 8 in the local newspapers. It's all a tactic. It started actually in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Remember the Cambridge police acted stupidly? Then it moved on to Trayvon. That's where it really got legs. From there, of course, Ferguson, New York, Baltimore, Oakland, Boston, Denver, Atlanta, they're all very effective. So you add that to everything else that's been federalized. like housing and big business and your health care and the EPA taking over your water and the food, energy. They're suing the states. They're suing nuns and bakeries. It is easy to blame the cops and each other, of course. But if you do, you're really and dangerously missing the big picture. Guys, we got to stand up. We got to stand together. This really is the big one. And right now, it is May 4th, 2015. We have to put up with this regime unless we do something big until January 2017. You see how much this has escalated? They are running out of time. They have to complete the rest of their agenda by January 2017.
What are you going to do? I mean, you can't even stand up to the local government because the cops are going to protect the mayor. The cops are going to protect the city councilman. I mean, this is what I mean. This is what they're for. They're there to protect the crooks, not to protect you. And if anything proves that, Baltimore did, when innocent people's businesses got burned to the ground and looted. It's only property.
It's the businesses and their employees who are the ones paying the taxes, who pay the salaries of the police and the city council and everybody. The people in the streets rioting and tearing stuff up, they're not paying anybody's salary.
See, that's the old way. It's just like the media. Remember? It was the viewers and advertisers that paid the salaries of scumbags like Ed Schultz. Not anymore. Now they get money under the table from government, from CIA, from Saudi Arabia, to anybody else, and their ratings don't matter anymore. And just like local police departments, they're getting all their money from Department of Homeland Security. I mean, they're giving them free vehicles and free this and free that.
Yep. You're right. And then they say, well, look at those rich neighborhoods, and then look at the city of Baltimore, and that's all we get. What do you mean it's all you get? It was a nice place, and it was decent. And those buildings, have you ever seen some of the ornamental work and the parquet floors and everything that are actually in those old buildings? You can't even afford to buy those now. You can't put those in your house now. Who can afford a parquet floor? Who can afford all that ornamental trim work and a brick building and fix the facades and everything? They were nice places. But since, what's it been, 50 years? 1967 was the last time they had a Republican anywhere near the place.
And you know what?
It's been almost 50 years. It took 50 years to get here. 30 of those, Cummings had his butt in that chair as a congressman.
Think about when this country actually changed. 1963, the intelligence agencies found out that they could whack a president and get away with it, and the sky was the limit after that. I mean, here JFK, a Democrat, was saying things like secret societies are repugnant, right? That secret anything was repugnant and terrible in all this. I mean, do you think he'd be allowed in the Democratic Party of today? There's no way. He'd be considered, a far-right conservative, wingnut. I mean, half the Republicans in the Republican Party aren't as right-wing as JFK was. That is true. Sad. So
they're left of him.
You have the Communist Party took over the Democrats, and you have the Socialist Party took over the Republicans, and that's your choices now. And people wonder why they're all in lockstep together, and nothing changes.
You're right. And that reminds me of another point. I'm glad you brought that up. Because, like I said, since 1967, Baltimore has been a Democrat city. It doesn't matter if you put Charles Manson up there. As long as you put a D behind his name, he's going to get elected. Those politicians know that. That is ripe for corruption and abuse. Look at the mayor. She's the secretary of the DNC. The mayor before her got thrown out for being corrupt, for taking fur coats and gift cards and bribes.
They're all
At that time, Rawlings Blake was the head of the city council, so she moved up into the mayor's spot, and then she ran an election and barely won, but she won. But you know damn well she was planted there. There's no choice up there.
There's no choice, period.
You take whoever they run, and the people there will vote for it. So you do the same thing for 50 years, and you want change? Honey, you got change. This is change.
You know, the only way that I would believe that even New York are still voting Democrat and Californians are always... The only way I would believe that is if some independent, completely independent agency actually hand-counted votes. That's the only way I'd buy it.
How many of those people on the street do you think actually went to a poll and voted?
Very few.
A percentage,
and even the
maybe
ones that
5%,
did,
2%.
I mean, do you know how
10,
many
12?
dead people vote per year, or every time? How many people that are 140 years old are casting votes?
Yeah.
I mean, they proved that in New York, that a very large percentage of people that were 140 years old are still voting. And the corruption from top to bottom is just over the top.
Oh, yeah, and there is not a better example of what you just said than Baltimore. I can't believe the stuff that we're finding about that place. And you're right, and the nepotism is just unbelievable up there. Everybody's married to or knows the other person. Even the lawyer for Freddie Gray is the mentor to the state's attorney.
Right.
So there's not going to be any justice up there.
No. It's all corruption from top to bottom. I mean, there was a time when you couldn't get, before the days of electronic voting fraud machines, and people actually were voting, and it was a lot harder to rig votes. Even if you had a hint of impropriety, they could come out with a scandal on you, and that would pretty much ruin it for you. Not anymore. Now you can be in prison and still get elected. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, that's true.
Or you can be Marion Barry and be caught on film smoking crack in a motel, and you get reelected. Isn't that just something?
Yeah, with a pile of money in your freezer.
Right. Now, it's just so ridiculous that...
Scott, that brings up a good point right there. The place is so rigged. I'd be surprised if even one vote was counted. They put in whatever votes they think they need.
That's right.
I have serious doubts on Election Day that you're going to see a line of people out there voting.
I mean, they were calling states for Obama on Fox News 5 minutes after the polls closed, and they had no idea. And even Dick Moore, or even Karl Rove, who's been out of the loop now since George W. left, he was even saying, "Hey, wait a minute. These whole districts haven't even come in yet. They're going to go completely for Romney." And they just brushed him off like it was nothing, like it was already set in stone. I mean, I remember a local news station accidentally putting online or on the air the election results that hadn't happened yet. Like they knew a day before who was going to win. Of course they did. And Joseph Stalin said, it really doesn't matter who votes, it's who counts the votes that matter.
True. And you don't even have to do that. The computer does it for you now. You press a button, you tell the computer, we had 50,000 votes, all Democrats. You don't have to have one person show up at your polls. And speaking of that, after all those riots and all the politicians and all the whole rigmarole up in Ferguson, they had a 12% voter turnout. 12% of the registered voters in Ferguson turned out for the election in November.
I wouldn't vote. I wouldn't vote in a national election if you paid me.
Well,
when I saw George W. Bush versus Al Gore, I just said, that's it, Al
Gore was a loser. He wasn't going to win.
I sort of believed in the system up to that point. But the thing is Al Gore did win. I mean, if you went by the popular vote and stuff, but now, and I despise Al Gore, by the way. But Jeb Bush was in Florida as the governor, and he's the one who swung it to his brother. I mean, that was all just, God, it was so fake.
Even popular vote is skewered because most of the people in a state are in the cities. So if they all vote one way, and you're going by popular vote,
they were the same loser. I mean, they were exactly the same It's like Hillary Clinton and Jeb Bush. There is no difference.
Yeah, we're going to get to Hillary.
One of them is going to talk a little bit, to the right to make the right and his base happy and whatnot, and the other one's going to, play up to his. But when they get in there, the main agenda points always move forward no matter what. Why they're arguing about abortion, who's for it and who's against it, which hasn't changed forever anyway.
Mm-hmm.
The main agenda things move forward.
Right.
And it's going to happen now, too. They're going to federalize the police. They are going to pass the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Those are big goals, and whoever you get in there is going to keep those going. And then, they had, like, Ted Cruz. Everybody's getting all behind Ted Cruz because he talks a good game. He says, when I get in there, I'm going to rescind everything Obama did that's unconstitutional. And now that sounds great, but he's preaching to the choir. But they ask him about Jade Helm, and he's dancing around that like he has no clue. Really,
well, he does
about.
now, and we're gonna get to that because he came out with a statement on that today.
He knows, okay, and if we know more than he does, that is sad. I mean, all you have to do is go back to an old UN document that even mentions Jade Helm by name, and it's a gun confiscation law.
Mm-hmm.
So, you mean he doesn't know this? Of course he does.
Oh, he does know.
Why aren't you saying it? Why aren't you stepping out and saying, this is the most dangerous thing I have ever seen this government do. Everybody should be panicking, and I'm behind the governor of Texas 100%.
Well, I'll tell you what he said in a minute, but I want to do one more thing before we go to break, and then when we come back, we're going to do some Jade Helm stuff, because I got a few things pulled up here that I have to bring to everybody's attention. But I had promised a long time ago that I would come up with a plan. Well, in watching these riots, I learned a few things. I learned that riots are very effective. Protesting is very effective. The more aggressive the protest, the more effective it is. Politicians, they don't want to get their hands dirty. That stand-down order to the police actually would help with this plan because they won't get in the way. And I also learned that the only thing that any of those rioters even respected, even a little bit, was when that mother showed up and smacked that kid around and grabbed him and pulled him out. She walked in, there was rocks and bottles and everything flying everywhere. She didn't even know that. She was focused. She had no regard for her own personal safety. She grabbed her kid and she pulled him out of there. But I noticed the rocks and bottles stopped for a second, and everybody was focused on what she was doing. Once she got that kid out of there, they went back to being jerks. But while she was there, so they do respect the mothers, the grandmothers, the aunts, the uncles, cousins. That's who we need now. I wrote a plan. Baltimore wasn't a spontaneous uprising, and you all know who the organizers are, the bag men, the sugar daddy, the cabal in our administration, and the minions under them. We've talked about that until we're blue in the face. All right, we're at the point now where it's too late to train people, but we still have a playbook. Theirs. We'll take their playbook. It's time for America to show up at these organized and planned riots to shut it down. We have to shadow the marches. We have to hijack those marches. We have to do it with big, overwhelming numbers. These rallies are everywhere. So it's not like we all have to go to D.C. or something. They're holding them in Denver and Boston and Oakland and Miami and Orlando and New York. It's not like anybody has to travel that far. It's time for America to show up at these organized and planned riots to shut them down. We should start by all showing up at Sharpton's march. He's planning a march from Baltimore to D.C.
It's not a
whatever.
March. It's a paid get-together.
Yeah, well, we should hijack it. We should make sure that Al the Snitch is exposed for the federal hack he is, and as part of his mission, he's a camera hog. They see his face first and often. So let's polarize him, demonize him, expose him as the fraud and the Fed snitch that he is. We have to learn to flash mob, and we have to do it fast. You can do it right on Twitter. You can do it on Facebook. Get all your friends' phone numbers. And when the chips are hitting the fan, all you got to do is press one button, and everybody knows about it. If they're sharing flyers and stuff like that, you can share them too. You got to do some reconnaissance on the movements and the leaders. Pay attention to those flyers and the notices. And then when they put it out, you go to them too. Watch what the kids are doing. If they're sharing texts and flyers, you better share them too. Watch the high school kids especially. See who's texting them. And then share all that information with your friends and social media. And then we have to show up in huge numbers. As soon as you see a notice of a rally, share it and show up. The sympathy rallies at the universities, those are the easiest to shut down. Remember, the other day, those Seattle riots began and ended at the university. Those are the same little wimps who need a safe room and Play-Doh and crayons and viewing Paddington because they're too sensitive to hear opposing views. Chicago, Boston, Denver, all of them were university-orchestrated marches. Those are the easiest to hijack. Just say boo to the little pissant trust fund babies who want to get down with the brothers so they have stories to share over the summer in the Hamptons. Remember, they're wimps. This weekend, they'll riot. Monday, they'll be running for a safe room if a conservative showed up on their campus. The rougher city riots, they're going to be more difficult and possibly dangerous. Keep that in mind. But you got to do the same thing. You have to shadow the marches. Bring the mothers, the fathers, the grandmothers, papas, aunts, uncles, and especially if they're locals. And all races, not just white people, black people, Asians, everybody. There's normal people in every race. If we stand shoulder to shoulder, we can block all this stuff. The city riots, they're going to take overwhelming numbers. But remember, guys, there were maybe 1,000 violent people. The rest were all peaceful. Just for comparison, you could fit 3,000 people into just one of those tall buildings there. So 1,000, and, with that comparison, is not really a big number. Remember, we lost over 3,000 people during the attack in 9/11. And not everybody was killed. Most of the people made it out. So that tells you the
thing
numbers.
Is
so that 1,000 looks small.
This administration and the previous ones, they don't care about public opinion. They don't care about marches. They don't, unless it's the ones that are further in their goal. Then they use that. They use the media to amplify that. And ones like the Million Biker March and the American Spring, they don't cover it all. So they really don't care about what the people think. They're going to do it anyway. They don't care. 90% of people were crying about it.
Yeah, well,
you know
we got to stop giving a damn. We got to stop giving a damn what they think. This isn't about them. This is about us. If we stand shoulder to shoulder, if we stand shoulder to shoulder and trail them.
Look at what we did when Obamacare was being pushed. We screamed to high hell. I mean, for months, do not pass this. There was picketing, and there was marches, and everybody was calling their congressman, and everybody, blah, blah, blah. Did it matter?
Yeah, I'm not talking
No.
about those rallies.
Public opinion.
I'm not talking about those rallies. Those rallies were nice, and they were civilized, and they were laid back, and everybody showed up, and they were patriotic. I'm talking about getting aggressive. I'm talking about standing shoulder to shoulder. I'm talking about blocking those businesses and those people from destroying them. The fun's going to wear off. If you outshout them and you shame them and you bring bullhorns and drums and sirens and anything that makes noise, if you dress in dark uniform shade of clothing, just think, a sea of people wearing black or navy or deep red, that's very intimidating, and it makes your crowd look bigger than it is. If the cops are being told to stand down, that's even better because they won't get in your way. You got to be twice as aggressive as these people. Once you stand up to them and you start growling at them and making noise and getting big and showing up in big numbers, they're going to cower and they're going to wimp. They're not going to be throwing things and beating people up because there's too many of you.
You want to know what that mayor in Baltimore would have done with a crowd like that you're talking about? She would have said, okay, riot gear, MRAPs, go take care of this right-wing rioters and leave the blacks alone. That's what she would have done.
If you got people rioting, and all of a sudden, out of the subways and out of everywhere comes thousands and thousands of people to stop this and to get in their faces and to get aggressive, and if we act in a unified way, then we will make a difference. And they're not going to pull all their MRAPs on you. They were told to stand down. So use that. We wasted a good opportunity. When those cops were standing down, they would have been standing down for us too. That's when we should have showed up, while they had that stand-down order. And as far as the MRAPs and stuff, if you got thousands and thousands of decent Americans getting in the way and stopping those riots, the cops aren't going to go after you. They're going to appreciate you.
I disagree. They will do, if they'll stand down and let innocent people's businesses get burned to the ground, they'll do whatever the hell that mayor tells them to do. And if that mayor says, hey, go attack all the white people, they'll go attack all the white people.
Imagine the shock if Al the Snitch and his band of merry Marxists were marching, and all of a sudden thousands of us swarmed the route, shoulder to shoulder, preventing the violence and the looting and the damage and the mayhem. You know, like I said, these rallies are in every city, not just D.C., so just make plans to attend. You know, I don't want to hear, oh, well, I would have really liked to go, but I couldn't get the day off of work. All right, I got to drop the kids off at soccer. Well, then you're not really that interested in saving the country, and you just want it to be saved. You want to sit there and you say, oh, help me, save me, but you don't want to do anything to get off your ass and go save yourself. It's time, ladies and gentlemen. We are at a crossroads. We either step up and stand together, or we just throw in the towel. What's the sense of even talking anymore? I guess we're done here. You know, what's it going to be? Are we Americans?
They're not going to do anything until their friends and family start disappearing. Then they'll start getting worried, and then they'll start getting upset. But as long as they have good TV reception and a six-pack of beer in the refrigerator, they're not going to do anything. Because they don't want to go to jail. They don't want to lose their job. You know, it's just
we're not going to get anywhere with a fatalistic, nihilistic attitude. We're not going to get anywhere if we keep saying, oh, we're doomed, Gulliver. Where's the knight in the white shining armor? Where's the cavalry? The cavalry's been kneecapped. Your military has been decimated. They turned the military into a social experiment. They got rid of the brass. They got rid of anybody who would have been a patriotic American. Okay? So that's not going to help right now. They can't help you. And now they're going to federalize the cops. So when this oppressive regime and these oppressive politicians who keep making these laws, and then they send the cops out to enforce the laws, you want to take it out on the cops? The cops didn't do this. The politicians that talked there for 30 years did it. And they've torn your military apart. So when they take over your cops,
you're going to get more cops.
That's right. When they take over the cops.
And guess what? I don't see the police unions coming out and talking bad about the federalization of police. And the people at the top that want to federalize the police, the first thing they think of is, how can we make the unions get behind us? I know we'll offer them better benefits, better job security, more money, and less lawsuits.
More members. Not all
members.
Police forces.
Right.
Not all police forces are unionized, but the feds are. So the unions aren't going to step up. The unions, got their fist out. All right, more dollars for the union bosses and the thugs, and more dollars for the Democrats, because they gave 90% of their donations to Democrats. So, and that's all the unions. That's not just SEIU. So the unions aren't going to help you. The unions are not going to help the cops help you. The unions can't help you with the military. Even the National Guard has been federalized because they have us in a perpetual state of war. Our soldiers are in trouble. They need us to step up to rescue them. They can't rescue us. We got to rescue them. We got to rescue these cops. They can't help us.
No.
So it's up
we
to
don't
us.
have to rescue
the cops. We either do it or we don't.
That's like saying we got to rescue these congressmen. Oh,
Mm-mm.
they're being threatened. Their families are being threatened. That's why they're voting the way they are. We've got to go rescue the congressman. No, you know what? I'm not rescuing anybody from the government. I'm going to rescue my friends, my family. That's what I'm going to rescue.
Well, as long as the rest of them stand down. So what if they don't help you? As long as they don't get in your way, it's still good, right?
Yeah, as long as a left-wing communist Muslim mayor like the one in Baltimore don't tell them to go smash my face in for doing the same thing that the black people are doing, only peacefully. Yeah, you're good. But if they'll take an order to stand down, they'll take an order to do anything, including smash your face in.
Just think of what happened in Egypt, okay? They were terrified of their military. The military was oppressive and brutal under the Muslim Brotherhood, but they fought them anyhow. And then the military said, I'm not going to fire on all those people. I'm just not doing it.
You know why?
When they stood down for a couple of thousand people. Imagine the stand down if maybe 100,000 of us showed up or 20,000 of us showed up.
And it's because the Egyptians don't have Dancing with the Stars and NFL football and a six-pack of beer, waiting for them at home. All they have is their freedom, and they went for it. And so it's going to take Americans to be hurting enough before they will do that. Eventually they will, but it's probably going to be too late if it isn't already. And
it will be. It will be if we do nothing.
You know how you were talking about the trust fund kids from California, the white ones that were rioting mildly? I even read something somewhere on Facebook, can't remember where they were calling them right-wingers. Look, everybody, even white right-wingers riot. It's not just, the black people and the Muslims and that. I mean, they were no more right-wing than Nancy Pelosi is. But they're even trying to spin that.
When gangs of outlaws used to come riding into one of those old towns out in the West and they'd kill off the sheriff, the people would eventually stand up and run them off. Well, that's what we have to do again. We have to start acting as if we are Americans. And we got to stop being so soft. And we got to stop being so comfortable and lazy. Everybody's got a job, everybody's got a family, everybody's got to drop the kids off at soccer. We'll get a sitter. If it is important to you, you will get up and you will make the moves. Now, this is my protest plan. And if anybody's got a better plan, I'm all ears. But, wanted a plan, that's a plan. We do it together, we stand together, we use their playbook. Like I said, there's no time to teach anybody anymore. But if you do everything those kids are doing, if you go to those rallies, go to those meetings, go to the riots, and go in big numbers, you can stop this, and you can do this, and you can take your country back, and you can stand shoulder to shoulder with other Americans of all races. We don't have to fall for this blacks against whites and cops against people and Asians against whoever the hell they're going to be against. We are being pitted against each other to divide us. So we should defy that. All those kids you saw in the streets, all those rotten kids, but that one mother, her kid wasn't there, was he?
Well, he was for a little while,
but he wasn't there after, was it?
Right.
So it was effective.
Yeah, and look what the left are doing. Oh, let's charge her with child abuse, they said.
Yeah, really. I'll stand at her doorstep.
And
I'll stand with her on her doorstep and boom down the stairs.
That's just like Obama. When a cop actually did the right thing, he says a cop acted stupidly, and then all these guys stand down, does what he wants, and he doesn't say a word.
Right.
They're doing his bidding.
Yeah.
Going along to get along. All right? Remember that term. Don't do it. Don't go along to get along. That's commie talk.
Exactly. But if we're going to steal their playbook, we have to steal all of it. We have to get aggressive. We have to use the words. We have to do everything they do. These people are taught that they're victims and everybody owes you something. Well, nobody owes you anything. When you're born, nobody says, okay, you have a right to anything. You have a right to opportunity. You have every right to the opportunity that everybody else who was born in this country has. What you do with it will judge your end result. Nobody guarantees you a result. You get up and you do it, and you get results. If you sit there and you wait for it to get done, you're not going to get it done. That's like sitting there waiting for a welfare check. All right? Somebody else is doing it for you. You got to get up. You got to do this.
Well, even the rioters, even the Al Sharpton rioters aren't doing it for free. I mean, they're getting paid.
No, they're not. That's right, they are.
They're busting them in from other states. They're getting money.
There's no reason we have to have all that type of money. If you can't afford bus fare to a riot, then you got problems. I'll loan you the money.
All right, we gonna take a break, or are we?
Yeah, we got to take a break. But I'm at the point now where we're done with the talking. We have exposed them all. Everybody knows Soros. Everybody knows Acorn. Everybody knows the new Black Panthers and Sharpton. You all know the real deal. Now, what are we gonna do?
And we all know we all know who's broken all the laws and who's guilty of sin. But unfortunately, we have no one that will enforce the laws.
Scott. We give them too much power. We give these politicians too much power. Are you kidding me? We're being governed by lesser people. You got a bunch of thugs and crooks governing us, and then we sit there and take it, and then they tell you, oh, that's not real Christian of you. Who are those atheists to tell me what is or isn't Christian for me? Who are they to put me on a high road? I don't have to be on a high road that you put me on. I'm on my own road, pal. You see what I mean? That's what they do to you, Scott. They tell you, oh, well, you're not acting very conservative. So
I don't care what people say or think about me. Right. I don't let that bother me. Somebody gets mad at me on Facebook, calls me a racist. It doesn't bother me one bit. I know the Saul Alinsky playbook. It doesn't work on me.
Right, and we have to adopt that. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Don't let them get to you. Don't let them tell you that's not Christian of you. Or you're supposed to be on some high road. Lose the high road. You're never going to fight the snakes in the gutter if you're up on a high road. You got to get down there with them. You have to be equally aggressive. You have to take their playbook. You're not going to take their playbook and then sing Kumbaya. You're going to take their playbook and run with it. And you're going to get aggressive. And you're going to start making yourself known and your presence known. I'm not saying be a bully. I'm not saying be violent. But I'm saying be aggressive and determined and big numbers. And you can do it. Where they show up, you show up. Or you can wait to get saved. And it's going to be a long wait. And on that note, we'll take a break. We'll be right back.
Right.
And we are back, ladies and gentlemen. You're listening to Moretti Underground, the Liberty Report, right here at PRN Radio Network. All right. While we're on break, I have one last thought about these riots, and then we're going to move on. I'm thinking, why would the cops step up to help us? They don't see us. They don't know us. All they see every day is all these criminals, and every day they've been told how much they suck. And then they got the administration saying, oh, yeah, the cops act stupidly, and, they're different rules for different races, and that, that's all hammered into them. So now the people don't trust the cops don't trust the people. They don't see us. They don't know us. They haven't met us. They don't know that the normal people are out there. Day after day, that's all they're told. They suck. So why would they step up? So, maybe we should introduce ourselves to them in big numbers. All right, now, there's some other things we got to bring up here. Just as we were coming on the air, I saw a report that Marine General Joseph Dunford has been chosen now as the Joint Chiefs Chairman. This is from the Associated Press. U.S. officials say Obama will nominate Marine General Joseph Dunford Jr. as the next chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, choosing a widely respected, combat-hardened commander who led the Afghanistan War Coalition during a key transition in 2013 and 14. Yeah, he led the drawdown. I don't know much about him, but I will by next week. Let's talk about Jade Helm for a minute, because Jade Helm is really important. And we still, you don't know what to believe. But CNN put out a thing, and it said, don't mess with Texas, even if it's just an exercise. Amid unfounded internet-fueled rumors. Yeah, now listen to the story first, because it gets good. All right, amid unfounded internet-fueled rumors that the U.S. Special Operations Forces might be trying to take over parts of the Southwest, Texas Governor Greg Abbott ordered the Texas State Guard forces that are under his control to keep an eye on the U.S. military during the large upcoming training exercises. As you know, the exercise is called Jade Helm 15. It's important that Texans know their safety, constitutional rights, private property rights, and civil liberties will not be infringed, Abbott said. Abbott ordered the Guard to monitor the 8-week-long exercise, which begins in July and ends in September, across 7 states in Texas, Utah, New Mexico. Most of the training will take place on private land in Arizona, Florida, Louisiana, and Mississippi. Much of it will take place on military installations. Some of the concerns are fueled by Internet postings of a map said to be made up for the exercise, which shows Texas in bright red and lists it as hostile territory. The scenario for the exercises is that U.S. Special Operations Forces travel to another continent, which includes hostile nations, and work with rebel underground freedom fighters there. The question for many is, do Americans need to have their civil liberties protected from involvement by the U.S. military? U.S. military officials tell CNN that they welcome the State Guard working with them to coordinate the exercise operations in Texas, but that one sentence in the governor's letter is without foundation. On Monday, Abbott told reporters that the Guard simply will gather information, monitor the exercises, and report to him about what's going on. Abbott says he's been provided assurances by the Defense Department that there is nothing for the public to worry about. Well, Senator Ted Cruz said he also asked the Pentagon what's going on and has been told everything is fine. But the Republican presidential candidate also indicated he understands why people may be concerned. Persistent mistrust of the federal government. Many on the Internet are convinced something is about to happen. Several websites are expressing the worries of some residents of Bastrop County, Texas, that the exercise is going to lead to a military takeover, something Pentagon officials adamantly deny. Jade Helm is a long-planned and coordinated exercise, Pentagon spokesman Colonel Steve Warren said. We're not taking over anything. Well, I listened to that. Joe Biggs had a live stream up. And I got to tell you, that colonel was not very convincing. He first said it was all on private property, but then he said they were going to mingle with the public. Then he said that they were going to try to be incognito. Then he said, well, they're going to be wearing armbands. So the guy contradicted himself constantly to the point where Joe Biggs gave the finger to the camera. All right, now, InfoWars, the guy Kit Daniels, he put out a pretty good article saying why you should care about Jade Helm, facts that the mainstream media buried in its reporting. A mainstream news station contacted InfoWars requesting information about Jade Helm, to which David Knight responded in extreme detail, but the station ignored the facts he provided and spun concerns over the controversial military drill as paranoid. When KVUE contacted me and we spoke verbally, they said they were looking to do a fear versus fact piece, Knight said, who spent 30 minutes on the phone with the Austin, Texas station and emailed them extensive information about Jade Helm. I tried to give them facts, but ABC apparently wanted to emphasize the fear, label it paranoid, and ignore the facts. But in the interest of giving the public full access to the facts regarding Jade Helm, instead of allowing mainstream media to bury them to the government's benefit, we have published an email exchange between Knight and KVUE, which the station never used in its reporting. KVU said, if Jade Helm 15 is not a training exercise, what do you believe Jade Helm 15 is? Why? Where are the documents/proof? David Knight responded, there's been a concerted effort to deliberately misrepresent what we've said. Thank you for being one of the few outlets to contact us for comment. Most articles have proceeded to build a straw man and then tear it apart. We first reported on Jade Helm on March 22nd. The Drudge Report picked up the story and the Jade Helm document, but establishment media ignored it until this week. There's been a media frenzy mischaracterizing our concerns in the last couple of days. Here are some of our responses. Mainstream media rushes to demonize InfoWars over Jade Helm. Dallas Morning News attacks Alex Jones over Jade Helm. We never said this was going to be martial law, but given the history of 9/11, 7/7, the London subway bombing, the other drills, where first responders were involved in a training exercise and a real attack happens at exactly the same time, place, and manner as the training scenario, we should keep a watchful eye on any training exercise outside of military bases. We've been concerned and reported for some time about urban warfare training that is increasing in scope and frequency. As this has been happening, there have been numerous military training scenarios labeling conservatives, libertarians, Tea Party, Christian, and veterans as homegrown terrorist threats. InfoWar has documented this for years with films, articles, and government documents, like this article from 6 years ago from the Missouri Information Analysis Center. MIAC is a federal fusion center that informs law enforcement officers of threats. The document conflates supporters of Ron Paul, Chuck Baldwin, Bob Barr, and opponents of NAFTA with the Oklahoma City bombing and Waco, and implies they are terrorists. Secret state police reports says Ron Paul, Bob Barr, Chuck Baldwin, and libertarians are terrorists. Jade Helm is a multi-state exercise involving all branches of special forces and lasting for 2 months. Training in Texas, Utah, and small parts of California, and labeling these red states as hostile. In the exercise, looks like it carries on with the Southern Poverty Law Center's narrative of fear that has been frequently embraced by Homeland Security and the military. This is our original report on Jade Helm, and it has the documents and the slides attached. It says here, feds are preparing to invade Texas. Lists state as hostile. It says, it goes on. It says the military has many military bases, and they have asymmetric warfare training centers within some of those bases, like the ones at AP Hill and Lejeune. These training centers replicate key areas of American cities for urban warfare training, down to the details of working traffic lights and street signs. Taxpayers paid over $96 million for the AP Hill Asymmetric Training Center that opened last fall. Why, with all the military bases and asymmetric training centers and land under federal control, must they train in an actual American city for the training to be realistic? And then leaked documents reveal that the Marine Corps Urban Training Center, based on U.S. town. So then KVU says, well, it seems you believe the military isn't being truthful. Why is that? So Knight says, well, we never gotten satisfactory explanations as to why the military continues to train against conservatives, libertarian, Tea Party, Christian, veterans, etc., as homegrown terrorists. And in spite of being criticized for doing so, in the recent dirty bomb drill in Richmond, California, the soldiers practiced crowd control, and role players taunted the soldiers and identified themselves as sovereign citizens rather than working on victims. National Guard riot drill features angry right-wingers as role players. The story went national when the Drudge Report picked up our article. The military's initial response was to pretend that documents didn't exist. They also said that they couldn't view the document as our site was blocked for the military. They blocked it themselves. But Drudge also linked to the Jade Helm document slides on Scribd. They could have addressed it directly, but they chose prevarication. So, at the public meeting in Bastrop, Texas, the lieutenant colonel, his name is Mark Lastoria, he chose to spin the exercise as taking place solely on private property at the invitation of property owners, and anyone who had a problem with that had a problem with private property. In other words, it's none of your business. The reality is that private property owners did not initiate this. And if you read the military's own document, it begins with a statement of purpose. The Army seeks a written invitation and approval from local officials to conduct realistic military training, RMT, within their jurisdictions for the joint military exercises. I'm going to stop right there for a second, Scott, because we talked about that. Remember you told me that they had no choice, and I said, no, I saw the invitation. Well, I guess you were probably more right than I was. Anyhow, note that they were seeking permission, written invitation from local government officials. Why is it that the business of government officials, if it's taking place on private property? And the term invitation is disingenuous when the military is pressuring local officials and private property owners for an invitation. So the lieutenant colonel portrayed this as nothing to be concerned about. Yet the document they presented to local Texas officials, it appears that they're going to be in public places doing suspicious things. And here's the quotes from the document describing the exercise. Operating in and around communities where anything out of the ordinary will be spotted and reported, locals are the first to notice something out of place. Some individuals may conduct suspicious activities. Some participants will be wearing civilian attire and driving civilian vehicles. So then KVUE says, well, is this something people should be taking action on, protecting themselves, or something simply to monitor? Then Knight responded, this is a very leading question. We've never said that this is a takeover and people should be violent. We said it should be monitored and people should be politically aware of what the real purpose is. So then the last question is, does Governor Abbott's promise to have the Texas State Guard monitor the training ease your minds? Why or why not? Knight says the state should always monitor federal activities. That's the federal system. So there you go. A lot of questions there I got now.
They're training against us, okay? There's something wrong with that. They're training against the American people. There's something wrong with that.
Yeah. Sovereignty.
Why is
Christians,
it Fox News dragging general after general, commander after commander up on there and saying, hey, how come you got Christians labeled as a terrorist group? I haven't seen them do anything in a very, very long time, or like ever, like a couple hundred years in some other country. Hey, why do you got, old Tea Partiers, little old ladies with flags waving and Tea Party T-shirts?
Yeah,
why are they listed as a terrorist group? But no, Fox News doesn't do that.
Why they haven't put in their training exercises radical communist, Marxist,
right?
Revolutionaries.
Because they're the ones in charge. That's why. But
right.
You can't even get Fox News to do a fair and balanced report on that. No, they'd rather talk about Freddie Gray. He watched too many Wile E. Coyote cartoons. That's what his problem was. When it's irrelevant who the guy is, what his name was, what his record is, completely irrelevant, because it's just the means to the goal.
Right. You're absolutely right. And they're trying to poison people's minds. Remember, Holder said that they were trying to brainwash people out of their guns. They've already brainwashed everybody in the cities that they're victims and everybody owes them something. And, white people are bad, cops are bad, Christians are bad, Muslims are good, rioters are good, corruption is good.
8 years ago, race relations were pretty well. I mean, they were
going
pretty well.
I thought we were doing great.
I mean, there wasn't any type of racial problems at all. I mean, Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson couldn't get airtime if they paid for it. And then along came, this jerk, and it all changed, didn't it? Look at the mess.
Yeah, it did.
This guy has created in this country and the world. He's a one-man wrecking ball.
Yep, and he couldn't have done it by himself. This has been planned and enacted for decades, and now he even said it. We are the ones we've been waiting for. Well, you know what? He's a liar and he's a thief. He stole that from the Hopi Indians. The elders gave a speech in 2001 that said, we are the ones we've been waiting for. Well, now I'm going to steal it. We are the ones we've been waiting for, not him.
And if you
what are we going to do?
You think the next puke that gets selected as president is going to be any better or change anything? Please don't put your hope. Don't put your hope in one candidate, because they have little to nothing to do.
I'm
with
putting
anything.
my hope in us. I'm putting my hope, and I'm betting on us. But we got to do it soon, because we may not even have an election. Did you think last year that we would be at this point this year? Well, imagine what next year is going to look like.
Yeah,
we got to do something. We got to say goodnight.
Okay. Good night, everybody.
Good night, Scott. All right, guys, that's all the time we have for today, and we hope you enjoyed our show.